Welcome, dear listeners, to Whispers in the Dark, where shadows tell stories and the night breathes secrets. I'm your guide through the unknown, your storyteller in the silence, weaving tales that will haunt your thoughts long after the last word fades. Here, we embrace the eerie, the unsettling, the stories that lurk just beyond the edge of the firelight. So settle in, dim the lights, and listen closely. The darkness has something to say. Let's begin this disturbing tale, Shattered Reflections. Cassandra Vale lived for attention. It wasn't just a craving, it was an addiction, a sacred ritual. Applause, stares, camera flashes. They were the lifeblood that kept her perfect heart beating. Her face, symmetrical, sculpted and cruelly flawless, graced billboards in Times Square and adorned luxury perfume campaigns across Europe. Her name trended often, her smile dissected by plastic surgeons and envied by influencers. But Cassandra didn't care about fame for its own sake. She lived in a world gilded with excess. Her days unfolded beneath crystal chandeliers in sprawling penthouses high above the city, where fresh orchids were delivered daily, and her closets overflowed with designer gowns worn once and never again. She traveled by private jet to sun-drenched villas and fashion weeks across continents. Her name whispered in elite circles and splashed across magazine covers. Every moment of her life was a carefully curated spectacle of luxury, beauty, and worship. A life where mirrors always smiled back. She cared about being seen, worshipped. She rarely listened when others spoke. Their words were background noise to her inner monologue, which narrated the divine tragedy of a woman so beautiful, she was untouchable. Her empathy had withered long ago, smothered by vanity. But beneath the glamour and gold, something unseen had begun to stir, and Cassandra's perfect world was about to shatter. It started the day she bought the mirror. The shop was like stepping into a forgotten dream, or a memory that didn't belong to her. Dust hung in the air like soft ash, catching the low amber glow of mismatched lamps that flickered uncertainly from the walls. The scent was thick, aged wood, old wax, dried flowers, and something older still, like the pages of a book that hadn't been opened in a century. Shelves loomed tall and close together, made of dark wood worn smooth by time, their edges etched with curling hand-carved patterns. They leaned slightly inward, crowding the narrow path like ancient trees in a forest, each one overfilled with artifacts too strange or delicate to touch. Ornate clocks frozen at impossible times, lace gloves yellowed with age, ceramic dolls whose glassy eyes glinted with a lifelike sheen even in the dim light. On every surface, frames of gold and silver were stacked like forgotten windows. Some held portraits of unknown faces, others held nothing but cracked, empty glass. The shop seemed to breathe, quiet and slow, as if it were alive in its stillness. The silence wasn't comfortable. It pressed against the skin, made the floorboards creak in ways that sounded less like footsteps and more like sighs. The light didn't reach every corner. There were pockets of shadow too dense to see into, where objects sat waiting in thick velvet silence, untouched and perhaps untouched for decades. A chill threaded through the air despite the lack of breeze. The temperature shifted with every step, growing warmer in strange spots, colder near the mirrors, of which there were many. Tall ones, cracked ones, hand mirrors, dressing mirrors, their surfaces covered in gauze or velvet, as if to protect the world from what they might reveal. Nothing in the shop looked arranged, yet nothing felt out of place. It was as if the store had grown this way, naturally, rooted in time, layered in dust, and soaked in secrets. It was almost hidden beneath a dusty velvet cloth. 7 feet tall, its frame was carved from dark wood, nearly black, twisted into shapes that didn't quite resemble vines, but something older, more predatory, like fingers or roots. They seemed to writhe when she wasn't looking. The glass was so pristine, it looked like still water. Yet when she gazed into it, she didn't feel the rush of satisfaction she usually felt admiring her own reflection. No, this was different. Unsettling. It was like she was being watched from the inside of the glass. The shopkeeper appeared from nowhere, her face pale and papery, with cataract-blind eyes that stared through Cassandra, not at her. "This one's not for sale," she rasped. Cassandra scoffed.
"Everything is. Name a price."
The woman hesitated, then whispered, "It belonged to someone cursed with beauty. Be careful. Mirrors remember what they're shown." Cassandra laughed, paid double, and left without another word. That night, she placed the mirror in her dressing room, right across from her vanity table, so she could study herself from every angle. She undressed slowly, admiring the perfect proportions of her body as the glass reflected her movements. The room was dimly lit by a chandelier, casting golden light over everything, except the mirror. The shadows there seemed thicker, almost wet. As she slid on a silk robe and approached the mirror, a strange tug pulled at her stomach. A chill slithered up her spine, like she'd stepped into a crypt. Her reflection was still there, but something was wrong. Her body stood the same, her face was hers, but her eyes, her reflection's eyes, were colder, emptier, hungrier. She blinked. The reflection didn't. A sharp whisper danced across her ear, too soft to understand. She spun around. Nothing. She turned back. Her reflection was perfect again. Heart pounding, she poured herself wine and tried to laugh it off. But the air in the room had shifted. The scent of perfume had been replaced with something metallic, like rust or blood. Her skin crawled. Then, from the mirror, a second whisper emerged, clear this time, and not her voice. "I see you." The lights flickered. Her wineglass shattered in her hand. Blood dripped from her palm, and she watched it fall into the mirror where it vanished before touching the glass. As she clutched her hand, the reflection lingered and smiled at her. She backed away slowly, the cold creeping up her legs like a rising tide. The whisper returned, wrapping around her like a lover's breath, but far too cold. "You gave yourself to the mirror." The chandelier flickered, then died, plunging the room into darkness. Only the mirror remained, softly glowing in the dark, as if lit from within. Cassandra crawled toward the door, her perfect features twisted in terror. Behind her, the reflection stepped forward and smiled wider. Cassandra Vale awoke to the sensation of something crawling beneath her skin. Her breath hitched. The room was silent, but the silence felt aware, like something unseen was listening. Her limbs felt heavy, her mouth dry. The sheets tangled around her like restraints, damp with cold sweat. A dull pain throbbed in her cheek, sharp and hot, like a fresh wound. She reached up, fingers trembling, and felt it. A jagged cut stretching from her cheekbone to her jaw. A sob tore from her throat. She scrambled out of bed and stumbled toward the mirror. Her reflection greeted her, but it wasn't her. The Cassandra in the mirror stood still while she moved, her expression empty, watching. Her flawless face was ruined by the deep, unnatural wound, raw and swollen. The flesh around it was discolored, almost bruised, the edges curling as if it were rotting from the inside. She gasped and stumbled back, but in the mirror, her reflection remained in place, Then, slowly, it lifted one pale hand and dragged a sharp, bloodied fingernail across its own throat. A voice hissed from the dark corners of the room, the same cold whisper from the night before.
You wanted to be seen. I'm watching.
The room tilted, her vision blurred. She tore herself from the mirror's grip and ran to the bathroom, hands shaking as she splashed scalding hot water onto her face. The cut remained. She scrubbed harder, until blood mingled with the water. But the wound was deeper now, as if her own reflection had dug the gash further. Her stomach lurched. This isn't happening. A frantic knock at the door jolted her back.
Cassandra? Are you okay?
Her assistant, Cassandra, yanked open the door, forcing a smile.
Of course I'm okay.
Janelle's face paled. Her eyes flicked to Cassandra's cheek.
Oh my God. What happened?
Cassandra stepped back, forcing the door closed between them.
It's nothing.
Slam. She locked the door. No one could see her like this. She turned back to the mirror. Her reflection smiled again. That night, Cassandra didn't sleep. The wound on her cheek had darkened, spiderwebbing across her face like something spreading beneath her skin. She curled in bed, clutching the silk sheets, the air in the apartment heavy with a stench she couldn't place, something metallic and wet. Her phone vibrated beside her. A message from her photographer. "We need to reschedule tomorrow. You don't look like yourself lately." Her hands clenched. But before she could reply, the screen glitched, flickering to static. Then, slowly, words burned across the screen in bold, black text. "Look again." Her breath caught. The temperature plunged, her bedroom lights flickering violently. A soft creak echoed through the room. The mirror, her head snapped toward it, and she saw it, a shape in the glass. No longer just a reflection. A dark, skeletal figure stood where her mirror image should have been. Its arms were too long, its fingers too sharp, its lips pulled back in a grotesque grin. Its skin was stretched tight, hollow sockets where eyes should have been, except for two slits, watching her with a cruel hunger. It raised one hand and pressed its clawed fingers against the glass. The sound was wet, like raw flesh against a window. Cassandra choked on a screen. Crack! A hairline fracture split across the mirror. The creature tilted its head, and another gash tore across Cassandra's stomach without anything touching her. The pain was blinding, like invisible claws ripping through her flesh. She collapsed, fingers clawing at her nightgown. Warm blood pooled beneath her, soaking into the sheets. The whisper returned, curling through the dark.
Beauty fades, but suffering lasts forever.
The last thing she saw before blacking out was her reflection standing over her, smiling. Cassandra awoke to the smell of rotting flesh. It clung to her skin, thick, suffocating, wet. Her stomach lurched, but the pain in her abdomen kept her from moving. She forced her eyes open. Her silk sheets were drenched in blood, her blood. She gasped, shoving the covers off, and screamed. Her stomach had been ripped open. Deep, jagged slashes stretched across her abdomen like they'd been carved with rusted claws. The edges were blackened, the wound swollen and festering. She scrambled out of bed, hands shaking violently, fingers sticky with blood. The mirror, it stood across the room, waiting. The cracks in the glass had spread overnight, jagged like veins pulsing in the darkness. And inside, beyond the glass, something moved. It was no longer just a reflection. The creature within was sharper now, fuller, more human. but not quite. Its limbs were still too long, its eyes still empty sockets, its lips too wide, smiling. Always smiling. But this time, Cassandra saw something worse. It had taken a piece of her. Her voice trembled.
What do you want?
The whisper came from behind her, curling along her spine like fingertips on bare skin.
You already gave me your face. Now I take your body.
She spun around. Nothing. When she turned back to the mirror, the creature was closer, much closer. Its decayed hands pressed against the glass, fingers curling against the surface. The whisper turned to laughter. Soft, cruel, knowing. And then it stepped forward, not through the glass, but out of her. Cassandra doubled over as a white-hot agony tore through her spine, her flesh pulling, shifting. Something was peeling her away from herself. She clutched at her arms, her stomach, but her skin, it was loose. Wrong. The creature's laughter echoed as she looked up and saw herself in the mirror. But it wasn't her anymore. The woman in the glass was her. But more beautiful, more perfect. The wounds were gone, her features flawless again, her eyes brighter, more alive. It had replaced her. Cassandra stumbled back, her breathing ragged, her mind screaming, "This isn't real, this isn't happening." Her hands burned. She looked down and choked on a sob. Her fingers were shriveling. The flawless hands she once flaunted were now warped, twisted, bones pushing against paper-thin skin, her fingernails blackening, curling like they'd been burned. She reached for the mirror in horror, but the reflection, the new Cassandra, just watched, amused. And then it spoke, in her own voice.
They will love me more than they ever loved you.
Cassandra screamed. That night, she didn't leave her apartment. How could she? Her body was rotting. Her beauty was peeling away like old paint, revealing something decayed beneath. Her skin was losing color, graying. Her eyes were sinking. Her lips were splitting at the edges. Her cheekbones too sharp now. Unnatural. She curled in the corner of the room, far from the mirror, rocking back and forth. The whispers didn't stop. The lights flickered. Her phone vibrated again. A text from her manager. "Your stand-in did beautifully today. Almost like she was you. Almost. Better." Her hands clenched. The thing in the mirror was taking her life. A soft laugh filled the room. Her head snapped up. In the darkness, she saw it, her reflection, but not in the mirror anymore. It was standing in the shadows, just watching, waiting. The whisper curled through the room, sinking into her skin like maggots into a corpse.
I want your beauty, and you be what hides beneath.
And then the pain returned. Something ripped through her shoulder, the flesh peeling away. Exposing bone, she collapsed, the sound of her own screaming swallowed by the dark. The transformation wasn't finished yet. And the mirror? It was laughing. Cassandra was no longer herself. She sat on the cold, blood-stained floor of her apartment, limbs shaking, breath ragged, her once perfect body falling apart, her hands warped, her face ruined. Her beauty had been stolen, piece by piece, by something that wore her reflection like a mask. The whispers never stopped. They slithered through the apartment walls, curling around her like invisible hands.
You were never to keep it.
Cassandra clawed at her skin, as if she could rip herself back into her old body. But her fingers only met raw, shriveled flesh, the bones beneath sharper, her arms thin as if something had been feeding off her. She tried to weep, but even her voice was gone. And the thing in the mirror, it was thriving. She didn't have to look to know. It had stolen her life, her face, her career, and no one noticed. Her phone, still clutched in her skeletal fingers, vibrated with another message.
Your last shoot was breathtaking. You've never looked better.
Cassandra laughed then, a dry, hollow, broken sound. Because it wasn't her in those photos. It was it. The creature from the mirror. The thing wearing her skin. She turned, forcing herself to look at the glass, and there it was, standing, smirking, perfect. Her reflection, but not her. And then, the mirror began to bleed. Crimson dripped from the cracks in the glass, slow at first, then pouring out, flooding the floor in thick, pulsing waves. Cassandra scrambled back, hands slipping in the warm, putrid liquid. The stench of rotting flesh filled the air. Her reflection grinned wider.
One last offering.
The pain came suddenly. A white-hot agony ripped through her legs, as if invisible hands had seized them and twisted. Snap! Cassandra collapsed, screaming, her knees shattered. The bones jutted out beneath thin, greyed skin, blood pooling beneath her. She tried to crawl away, but her body was failing. From the mirror, the reflection tilted its head, mocking her.
Do you understand now?
It whispered. And then, with slow, deliberate precision, it lifted its perfect hands to its flawless face and peeled it away. Cassandra stopped breathing. The skin came off in ribbons, wet and curling, revealing what had always been beneath, a thing of raw muscle and bone, of teeth that stretched too far, of empty, rotting sockets where eyes should have been. And it laughed. The blood on the floor rose, swirling like a tide, pulling her in. Cassandra struggled, gasping, thrashing, but the liquid dragged her toward the mirror, toward her own reflection, reaching out with hands that no longer had skin. The last thing she heard before darkness swallowed her whole was her own voice from the other side of the glass.
Now we are one.
The apartment was silent, a dark, oppressive silence. The blood-stained walls gleamed under the dim light from the broken lamp. The shattered mirror lay in pieces on the floor, reflecting only fragments of a shattered reality. Cassandra's body, what was left of it, was frozen in place. The grotesque, tangled mess of limbs sprawled across the cold floor, as if she were nothing more than a discarded rag doll. Her skin had turned ashen, her eyes sunken deep into their sockets. Pupils nothing but two black voids. She was no longer the beautiful model she once was. And yet, the twisted creature who had stolen her face was still out there. It had taken more than her beauty. It had taken her life. But the thing in the mirror, it was still wearing her skin, still smiling. Her phone buzzed again. The message was brief, but it made Cassandra's broken heart stutter. You've never looked more perfect. The world is waiting. That was when it happened. A whisper rose from the shadows of the room. Soft at first, like the faintest breath on the nape of her neck. But then it grew louder.
You still think you can escape? You still think you can escape?
The voice was hers, but hollow. Empty. Her head snapped up, and through her decayed eyes, she saw it. The reflection wasn't just in the shattered glass anymore. The reflection had stepped out of the glass, out of the nightmare she had become. It stood there, in the center of the room, perfectly whole, beautiful, untouched. It grinned at her. Cassandra tried to move, but her limbs refused her. The skin on her arms sloughed off, leaving only muscle, bone, and blood, a pulsing mass of raw flesh. Her voice, Her once beautiful voice was no longer hers. It was a broken rasp. But she tried to scream anyway, but the reflection only laughed. Then it stepped closer. Cassandra could feel the coldness that radiated from its perfect form. She felt the weight of its presence pressing down on her, crushing her with each step. It was her, but it was wrong. So wrong. With each movement, the creature's features shifted subtly, becoming more monstrous. Its jaw elongated, its eyes bulged, and its smile stretched, jagged and cruel, splitting across its face like a wound that would never heal. The flesh was tearing, but Cassandra could not look away. The creature reached for her. Its hand, bone-thin, grasped her ruined face. The touch was freezing, like the hand of death itself. And then it whispered, softly, into her ear.
But you see, I am you now. You are always meant to be me.
Her world shattered, or rather, it shifted. For just a moment, Cassandra saw the truth. The mirror had never been a reflection at all. The creature had always been her. It was the demon that had taken her, but it was also a part of her, something inside her all along. The vanity, the arrogance, the desire for beauty. It had been feeding, growing, and now it had consumed her. Cassandra was nothing but a mortal vessel, and the demon had only been waiting for the moment to rise. Her beauty was never truly hers. It had been borrowed, and now it had been returned to the abyss, to the darkness that had birthed it. The last thing Cassandra felt was a cold, sharp pain in her chest. It wasn't her skin anymore. It wasn't her body. It was all of it, pulling apart, breaking into pieces. The demon's touch raking through her being like claws raking through fragile flesh. And then, nothing. But just before the final darkness swallowed her whole, a flash of memory surged in her mind. Her reflection had not only been stealing her beauty, it had been growing. Every night, every inch of her skin and soul had been feeding it. And in the end, it wasn't Cassandra who had been destroyed. It was the demon, finally revealed. The real reflection who had been swallowed whole by her. Her face, once perfect, now burned with the marks of the demon's hunger. The demon had wanted to take her beauty, but in the end, it had become her. And as the darkness closed in, Cassandra's last broken thought was this: she had always been the demon. Thank you for listening to Whispers in the Dark. If you'd like to support the show, head over to our Patreon, where you can sign up to one of 3 different tiers. Or, if you prefer to make a one-off contribution, maybe you'd like to buy me a coffee, or show support through our website at Buzzsprout. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and YouTube to stay up to date with new episodes, behind-the-scenes content, and more chilling tales. And remember, you've heard the whispers. But some doors, once opened, never truly close. If you feel something watching tonight, don't look back. We'll see you next time, if the dark lets you go.